Welcome, AD Chats with Mohajir and Marc, episode number 3. It's been a while since we have had a chance to catch up, and we got a busy show. Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports is going to join us. You know Dennis a long time. We got a lot of interesting topics. We'll get to him. How you doing?
I'm excited, man. Glad to be back in the swing. And
a lot of things have happened since we last
spoke. A lot of things have happened, man. Just a few things have happened,
Yeah.
but ready to go.
Yeah. Let's dive into it. It's been a while now since Coach Frost has been here and diving into getting set for 2025. As you just look back at the whole process, give me a couple of things that stand out now as we're knee-deep into building a roster and planning for 2025.
I think the biggest challenge we had was bringing Scott back in the fold. Obviously, he's been out for 2 years, and he was with the Rams this year, and just getting his mind back in the recruiting recruiting mindset, and then not to mention that when his last year coaching, even though NIL was a thing, it wasn't quite the thing that it is now with the transfer portal and the negotiations of contracts with players, with everybody on your team. And he's a very smart person, and he's navigated through that really quickly. And I think he put together a pretty good roster, and put together a staff. And, if there was, I kept checking on him during that 3-week period and just making sure he was okay. He's like, damn, this is a lot. And it was really important for us to be positive and to be very supportive. And he, like I said, you can tell that he really was excited about being back. But I did think that he got some curveballs, just from just what the landscape is now. And, like I said, he's navigated through it really, really well. And now he's back, talking ball and working on football and getting ready for spring practice.
Let's get to schedules. Everybody loves when a schedule comes out. Our schedule's out for 2025. We're going to open up on August 28th against Jacksonville State, who had a great season last year. North Carolina A&T, then a bye week, and then North Carolina comes here, and then here goes 9 straight conference games. Your thoughts on the 25 schedule?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the way that we've cycled our schedule, it's a little, I'd say frustrating, but a little disappointing, because when you play teams on the road or you play them here and they beat you and you want to go play them the next year, you have to wait a little longer than what what you had to in the past. We play Kansas State on the road, first Big 12 competition again. And I think the next time they come here, I think it's 27. Yeah. And we'd love to play them again here. We go back on the road. We played at Texas Tech our first year in the Big 12, and we go back on the road this year again. And I would love to have them back. Especially the way we lost. And vice versa. The other schools think the same way. I'm sure some of the teams that we played, like Arizona and Oklahoma State, would have loved to have us come back to their place. Well, Oklahoma State's coming back here this year.
How much input do you have? And
well,
ADs talk about that a lot.
It's kind of funny, because we just had Big 12 meetings, and we talk about, you have input. But at the end of the day, they have like 95 iterations of the schedule. Yeah. And, when you get down to the end, they call you and they talk to you. You say, okay, here's what we got. And you're like, yeah, I don't really want to play them in that sequence. Like, well, it's kind of too late now. And at the end of the day, you play it. Your schedule's your schedule. And you may like certain things about it, and you may not like other things about it. I love playing at BYU. Don't love playing BYU at the end of the year.
Last game of the year.
Game of the year, just because of I've got Florida kids, and it's a little cold, but it could be a warm 50. If you never know.
Good thing is, we don't have any back-to-back road games. It's home road.
And that's one thing that the Big 12 has really tried to make a conscious effort of not doing that. The other thing too that's a positive is we don't leave from a travel standpoint. We don't leave the state until. We only leave the state twice until November 1st, which is kind of a big deal. So you're not really leaving the state. So it gives you, in the first part of your season is where you really pick up momentum, and you're playing at home in this area a lot.
Let's bounce around some other things. Got a new volleyball coach. Are you excited about that?
Very excited. Did a national search and went from coast to coast. And Matt, we believe, is going to do an excellent job. He's one of the, I think, number 9 most active winning coach in the country, and he's done a great job. We were kind of lucky because his wife is in the broadcasting field, and she's on a broadcast or network TV, local network TV, or local broadcast TV, and really he's been offered jobs to leave the market and really couldn't do it because he values his wife's career as well, and their family does. And the fact that we're here in Orlando and she's got an opportunity to possibly change markets at some point in her when they make that decision was a huge plus. So again, the region in Florida was a huge plus of why we were able to attract him.
Getting it done on the playing field in the classroom, it's always mattered to you, and another great semester from our student athletes in the classroom, right?
Yeah, we set a record. Yeah. The best GPA in the history of our program. And you know, what was really odd about that is typically when you don't have quite as successful season in football, usually your grades go down. There's a correlation when you have really good seasons, you have pretty good grades. For whatever reason, our football did really well this year and off the field, and which was great. And we got a fantastic academic staff led by Tara Helton and our academic counselors and our tutors, and they just put a lot of emphasis and they care. It's they don't look at a kid whether you're transferring or whether you're here for 1 year or you may be gone. They care about their academic success, and that's always going to be a core principle of ours.
All right, what can you update us on the RevShare world? There's so many moving parts. The case hasn't been signed off with the judge yet. I know you're planning for things, and we don't know the formulas of everything, but what do you want to share about where things are at now?
So we're planning we every day about RevShare coming in-house July 1. The settlement is right now. There was the last week, I think, I can't remember the actual date, but last week there was a bunch of objections that came in on the last day that could possibly object, and now we are waiting for that settlement to be approved on April 7th, and if it's approved, then we'll continue to move forward as we've planned. If it's not approved, that's something we're going to have to discuss. I mean, there's been a lot of resources been dedicated, staff time, personnel, money that's been dedicated towards getting this settlement approved. If we do have a plan B, I think from practitioners, and I think the NCAA is that I think we'll continue to go forward. It's just you might not have that cap. You may not have the third-party evaluations of range of compensation or fair market value that is required in the settlement. So we're staying tuned and trying to navigate through it.
One area that I think could be confusing for people: scholarship side, roster limits, all sorts of stuff. We're going to see an increase in scholarships now, right?
Yeah, we'll probably increase about 71 scholarships, and that will be for every sport except football. Mm-hmm. And our Olympic sports, and particularly our female sports, will definitely have an increase, and that's going to be our allocation to RevShare for our Olympic sports. They'll still have Alston, which is an academic award. We'll have more scholarships than they ever had, and I think we can be competitive. Baseball will go to 25 scholarships. In the past, people always remember the 11.7 scholarships. It'll go to 25, which is not every school in our league is doing that. Mm-hmm. We're making an emphasis on baseball. We think we have a lot of upside there. And I think what we've all realized is not every school is the same, is every school has its own priorities and its own emphasis on certain sports and where they think they can drive the most revenue and be the most successful, and that has to be determined by school. I don't think the conference is going to dictate that. I do think that you'll see where in the past, I do think you'll see some of these leagues where you see some of the sports maybe drop off as far as funding and just their success rates because of funding, and because you'll have some schools that really fund a certain sport heavily in the league, and then some schools won't because they have other priorities. If you're a basketball heavy school and have a long history of basketball, they're going to fund. They're going to have a little bit of a tug of war between how you fund football versus basketball. We're definitely going to be additive. We'll fund our basketball program more than it's ever been funded before, even this year. But we also have to maintain our level of competitiveness when it comes to RevShare with football. We have to be, because we're not really just recruiting against, and that's why I've told several people in some of the interviews, we're not really just recruiting against the Big 12. I mean, we are, but we're also recruiting against the southeast part of the United States for the most part, and the Big 10. I mean, not only do you recruit against Miami, Florida State, Florida, and all the southeast regional schools, but the Big 10 all comes here too. And so we have to be competitive, and that's what we're working on right now. We become full share member starting July 1. The lion's share of our new revenue is going to go towards RevShare. We do have to level set some of our budgets and team travel, equipment, off the field coaches. You have your budgets. We have coaching staffs. You have support staff for the sports, like ops people and recruiters and all that stuff. And then you have centralized administration. And we're trying to really ramp up the coaching and the support sport specific admin.
We're going to get to Dennis Dodd in just a second here to talk about the Big 12. I'm just curious, though, your overall view of how the league right now stands. And what I mean by that is I think the new members and everybody kind of familiarizing themselves. So when I ask you about the health of the Big 12 right now, you say what?
I think it's going to level set. I really do. I think what you've seen in the last 2 years, you've seen a little bit of a separation. I think a lot of that has to do with the collectives in NIL. And if everything that they're telling us from the House case is, if it's going to be approved, then I think we're going to be on more even playing field. I don't think that people, unless they can figure out a way to do it, which a lot will, and some will, I should say, I think there's going to be more of an even playing field than ever before, and I think the Big 12 is poised and ready to be in that conversation as the to compete with the SEC and the Big 10. I really truly believe that.
AD chats with Mohajir and Marc Continue, and one of the top college football writers in the country from CBS Sports, Dennis Dodd, joins us to chat today. And you two are friends, go back many years, obviously.
Awesome guy. Thank you for joining us today. You're our first national writer on this show, and you have your ear to the ground on almost everything: governance, football, CFP. There's sometimes I even call you for some information, right? I always say, what are you hearing right now? So you always give me some good intel. So we'll get right started and start asking some questions.
I want to know, Dennis, is he an aggressive texter? Like, is Terry one of the guys that ranks like top 5 an aggressive texter?
I wouldn't say aggressive. I'd say faithful. He's there. He responds. I'll say that. And that's all you want.
Let's kind of dive in. We're always curious outside of our UCF circle reaction to things that happen here. So give us your view, if you can, on Scott Frost coming back to UCF and just how you view that story.
Yeah, I think, well, as I've communicated, I think it's an absolute home run. I think it's a win-win. Scott needed a rebirth. UCF football needed a new vision and a new leader. And this goes right to the heart of the guy who got the program there. I had an in-depth conversation with Scott. Now it's been a while. It was like October of 23. We lived there in Scottsdale for a while, and he graciously agreed to meet me for breakfast, like for a coffee, just to see what he was up to. And this was when no one was talking about him. He had no prospects. I mean, he had prospects, but he was just laying out. And he said some stuff about his career and where he had come from at Nebraska, that while it was off the record, I think it was fair to say he had soured on his alma mater. The place where he grew up. I know he started at Stanford, ended at Nebraska, but it's a long story short. This is a complete rebirth for him. So, the way he left Nebraska, it was not good for any coach that's not winning. It's not good. But to get this chance at a place where he made his reputation as a top coach is great. And I don't know if I'm going to grade coaching hires. We haven't gotten that far yet. I noticed some others have done it on our site, but I'd have him right up there with in terms of a hire this year as an A plus guy.
Well, listen, you know what? You're right in the heart of Big 12 country. And what is the perception right now of UCF?
I look that the big picture. I think we learned from Arizona State that anybody in this league can win in football. Obviously, pick 16th, they win the league, they go to the playoff. That can be literally any program in this league. And I think that's what makes it so entertaining. I think the same things still apply to UCF. You're in a recruiting hotbed. Um, it's hard to win there when UCF is playing well. It's kind of a pit to me to go in there. It's really hard to win there. The perception is, I don't think it's changed from when it is a valuable piece of the league, a piece of Florida, that the league needed. Before that, I always said, well, the Big 12 doesn't necessarily need a team in Florida because they all recruit there. But this was a great get for the Big 12 and for Commissioner Yormark's vision. So I lump UCF in there with really everybody. If you get hot, then you can win this league and go to the playoff, which, by the way, I think, long story short, in that discussion, there's probably going to be 2 spots from this league in the very near future guaranteed. So that even doubles the chances of getting in most years, because I personally think it's going to expand. And maybe by the end of the month, Terry, frankly, for 26 to 14 and maybe to 16. And that's going to give everybody a better shot at this. So the perception at UCF is great right now. Gus didn't get it done. Gus is great. Gus got a great job too and leaving. But I think the perception is still the same, that it's not a sleeping giant because it's realized its potential and they've got the guy there that did it.
Dennis, I'm curious your thoughts to play off the playoff. We just did 1 year of 12. We're already talking about changing. If they ask you, how would you tweak? A lot of talk about the seedings and so forth, and then some have indicated if we're looking at 14 or 16, maybe guaranteeing spots based on leagues, and some wonder about the future of conference championship games. So give me your crystal ball view of what you think and some things you'd like to see.
Yeah, so much involved in that. I think the one thing they can get done, and there's a CFP meeting at the end of the month. I don't know the exact date with the commissioners and the presidents, where they'll kind of model this thing for 26. But I think in the near term, beginning next season, I think they can do the seedings again. Terry, you might help me with this. I think it takes all 10 commissioners to vote unanimously for any changes. Yes. But I think they can get the seeding done in that. I think we all agree that Ohio State wasn't the number 8 seed in that bracket, even before it began. Now the problem is, Boise State won its conference and by the rules was guaranteed a spot in there. Do you want to change that? I suppose Mountain West and the Pac-12 have a vote. They're probably not going to go along with something like that. So I would be okay with seeding teams as they are, not necessarily because they're conference champions. I wrote a big piece recently about, the fact that conference championships just don't matter anymore. For the 4th time in 26 years of the BCS era since 98, a team that didn't win its conference, won the national championship. And that was guaranteed in this bracket before the semifinals, because we had all those such teams in there. So we had those upsets, well, quote unquote upsets in the beginning. Anyway, I think they can fix the seeding thing fairly quickly. We've been told for now months and years that beginning in 26, with the beginning of the new 6-year contract with ESPN, everything's on the table. And by everything, structure, format, bracket expansion, automatic qualifiers, which I think the SEC and Big Ten, for better or worse, are probably just going to ramrod down everybody's throats, even if they don't like it, because they can. And I think it's going to
Well,
go
that's
to,
interesting. I'm going to stop you there. And a lot of people say that. You say they're going to ramrod it down the people's throats because they can. Why can they?
well, they've got, at least going forward, they've got a weighted voting structure. Now, is that weighted voting structure in these talks enough to overcome the other conferences? That is not a question I can answer right now. I don't know
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, and so I know about the weighted voting structure, but however, the threat is that, always I hear the national media, this is not my opinion, the national media, and you correct me if I'm wrong, say, well, they'll just leave and go do their own thing. ESPN doesn't want that. You don't want to have this bifurcated national championship. And also, if you think about it, and I talk about this a lot, you're representing, you're throwing out, the schools where the ACC are, schools where the Big Ten are, those states. You're just going to throw those states out and say, hey, you can't compete for these championships. So we're just going to take this Mississippi's, the Alabamas, the South Carolinas of the world, and we're going to create this own national championship. To me, that just seems a little far-fetched. But you obviously are having more conversations with people than I am. So you tell me, do you think that's realistic when there's a threat they're just going to go break out on their own?
Yeah, a couple things on that, because I know ESPN wouldn't like it or necessarily want it, but they sure as heck would pay for it, to get those 34 schools under one banner playing for a championship. I know what it sounds like. I know it sounds bad, but we've already reached a stage, Terry, where I think it's not worth talking about realignment anymore. It's worth looking inside these conferences. And I keep using this example. When is Alabama going to wake up one day and say, why is Vanderbilt making the same money we are in media rights? And I think that's what's going to happen. Not today or tomorrow, but that's what you see about what this Super League looks like. And again, that has no support at all among the decision makers and stakeholders. But when these media deals end, and they're coming up sooner than you think, about 2030, 2031, I think the Big 12 runs till 2031, then that's a time when this could happen, where you could have a subdivision of these schools. I think the Super League proposed like 80 out of 134. That's not 34, but 80 is still significant in that you'd be leaving 54 behind, basically.
I often wonder, because we talk about level setting the CFP as far as comparing schedules to schedules. Obviously, us in the Big Ten, the Big 12 and the Big Ten have 9 conference games. And when I was on the committee, I used to stand on the table with this. The SEC and the ACC had 8 conference games. And one of the metrics on there is strength of schedules. Well, when one conference or 2 conferences strength of schedule is less, or it's better. It comes out better because of 50% of your teams have one less loss. To me, that's not comparing apples to apples. I am told, and you would have to, that some of the TV partners aren't willing, if the SEC or the ACC decide to expand to 9 conference games, that TV's not going to pay for that. So my question is, if we just did a new 6-year deal for the CFP and they expand to 14 or 16, is ESPN going to pay for that? Do we guarantee that's going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. The contract as written states that ESPN does not have to pay for 14. So they again, by the end of the month, they could go to 14 beginning in 26 if they choose to. 16, they do have to pay for it. And I will tell you this, meaning the conferences and the stakeholders, have already been warned by people in the industry that know such things that, if you go to 16 and you do these automatic qualifiers, you better look and see what you're doing, because it becomes, as successful as it was the first year, and I thought it was very successful.
That was great.
You run the danger of this becoming pro wrestling, and I'll give you the example, where most everybody knows who's in on November 1st. Well, what was great about the playoff this past year, it's that I wrote a story on November 1st saying there were 45 or 50 schools legitimately in the running, and there were. I
Oh
vetted
no,
it.
it's great.
Yeah, I vetted it with Bob Bowlesby and the guys that put together the original idea for 12. You run the risk of on November 1st in that scenario. Well, Iowa's in, they're the number 6 seed, and
Yeah.
they're going to be playing for it. So
It was great. The 12-team playoff was fantastic. It was a lot of excitement. To your point, no one really knew going into the last weekend where, I think the seeding can be improved a little bit. I don't disagree. When I was on the committee and they were talking about expanding to 12, I was a big fan of it. People said, well, it's going to be harder for the committee. It's not really. It's just another seeding process. You were already seeding the top 12 anyway for the New Year's Six Bowls. And so you're basically now just putting those folks in the playoffs. So, well, listen, you've got a lot of knowledge, and one other thing, and I know Mark's probably got a question for you, is this new governance model that we keep hearing about. Give us your opinion on what exactly where that's going to go.
are you talking about the Power Four governance?
Yes, the autonomy governance model.
Yeah, I'm not sure they know. I think they want the ability to have more power over championships, but I don't think they know what they want to do. I think, Terry, at the end of this day, they've got football, and they created football because they didn't want to get in the situation where football was playing for units. And those stakeholders, the moment they went to that in the tournament, it's been many, many years since they've done that. They saw that as a drawback. In other words, the blue bloods of the sport, Carolina, Kansas, what have you, thought from the beginning they should have more money to play for in the tournament. If I were them in the short term.
Well, it was a model that people don't realize. At one particular time in the Big 8, new Big 12, I was in the Big 12, people were getting a disproportionate amount of money. Kansas was getting the most basketball money. Texas was getting the most football money. Oklahoma, Texas A&M were there in the Big 12. So there was a disproportionate amount. I think that's why your favorite school, Missouri, and they decided to leave. Is that accurate?
Well, I think, yes, generally over revenue.
Yeah.
In particular, their perception of the Big 12 being unstable. But I will say, as a close observer, and you're right, a Missouri alum, they've completely lost their identity. They don't have a natural rival in the SEC. They're doing well in football. They're not going back to the Big 12. But to me, they've certainly lost their identity in basketball, where they had a lot of tradition and history in that league. Now they're just one of whatever it is, 16 teams, and they happen to be ranked well right now.
Yeah,
Terry, maybe you can answer this question. When was the last time Missouri was ranked?
No, you can't ask me questions.
That just happened today.
Huh? What was that?
That just happened today. Missouri is ranked ahead of Kansas. I can't remember the last time that happened.
Fog Allen and James Naismith are turning over in their graves right now.
Not even the Norm Stewart days can I remember much of that. But no, they left. But going back to the original question about Power Four governance, if I were them, and I'm talking about the 4 commissioners of the Power Four, it looks like the tournament's going to expand, by 6 or 8 teams. And we know why that's going to happen. Those aren't going to be filled by Fairfield or Monmouth. That's going to be the 11th team from the SEC or the 10th team from the Big Ten. That's who's going to get those spots. Now, to do that, you're going to have to go to CBS and TNT and ask for more money. Well, if I were them, I wouldn't let the NCAA anywhere near that negotiation. Because as you know, the contract as written has really stuck the membership with a bad deal. Mark Emmert did it. He extended it a few years ago through 2031, I think, and it's way under market. And there have been analysts that have said that. I wouldn't let the NCAA anywhere near that negotiation. I would use whoever they pick, those 4 leagues pick, to help negotiate that thing. That's the kind of power I think they're looking at. It's way in the weeds.
No, I think it's good.
And I think with other championships, I think there are corporate sponsorship championships in basketball and the other 88 championships that have yet to be realized. In football, I just was at a conference about it, in Las Vegas in December, where somebody stated there that There is $4 to $5 billion to be made in college football because it's so undervalued that's just sitting there on the table because we're having this current, I don't know, what is it? Compensation and employment issue, which eventually will work its way out. But there's a lot of money to be unlocked there. And I think they want more direct access to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, Dennis, here we go. We got a lightning round of questions for you, all right? Let's go. First job as a sports reporter.
Sherman Democrat in Sherman, Texas, used to be a sleepy little town about an hour north of Dallas. Now it's a bedroom suburb of Dallas, has produced its share of NFL players. That's where I was introduced to the Texas high school football culture, and I'm forever indebted for that because we had a two-man staff. I think we covered 70 schools. So we were out there on Friday nights covering the games.
That's a big deal there.
Yeah. It was an afternoon paper. How about this for a schedule? In at 7 a.m., out at the latest at 2 every day. And we didn't publish, I think, on Saturdays. So that taught me what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do that grind for the rest of my life. That was the first job.
Best game you ever covered? Best event or game?
Still the flea kicker game, Nebraska, Missouri in 1997, where that was Nebraska at the height of its powers. Missouri looked like it had upset Nebraska, and Siobhan Wiggins, is that his name? Kicked the ball thrown into the end zone by Scott Frost, and there was no rule against such things at the time. He kicked it in midair, was caught by a Nebraska player, went into overtime, and Missouri lost. And it was just one of the greatest nights, greatest games I've ever been to. The only game in AP poll history where the loser dropped. Nebraska went from number one to number 3 after winning the game, and Missouri got into the top 25 after losing a game. That's the first and only time that's ever happened.
But didn't Nebraska win the national championship that year?
They did. That was Tom's going away present split with Michigan, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, favorite football venue?
I'll give you a couple. LSU, the Death Valley is really great. Love that place. And when it's cooking, when everybody's bought in, the Coliseum in LA, because when USC's good, and it's been a while, we know that, they're like another pro franchise there.
Favorite athlete of all time, whether you covered or just as a fan?
Favorite athlete of all time? Wow. I'd have to say they made me do this list during the season, like the top.
How about who you've covered? Your favorite athlete you ever covered? Let's just narrow it down for you.
Well, the best I ever saw was Barry Sanders.
Well, but your favorite one that you liked, do you like to cover?
Oh, that's a good one. You know what? Brian Bosworth, because back in the day when you could do such things, I interviewed him in his dorm room. And I think he had a beer while we were talking. I'm not sure. I don't think it matters. But to put a full circle on that, a couple of years ago, that's why I say Boz, because a couple of years ago, I was at a Kansas State, Oklahoma game at K-State. And I went looking for Joe Castiglione at halftime in his suite at the stadium, and he wasn't in his suite, but the only person in there was Brian Bosworth. And he looks up and he says, "Hi, Dennis." And I went, "Oh my God." The fact that he even recognized me was something. So I thought that was pretty cool.
There's a rule in college football that Dennis Dodd could change. What would that be?
Ooh, that's a good one. Can I say better parking? No, that doesn't count. It doesn't have anything to do with the game. Let's go back to that one. Let me think about that one. I'll answer that one last. Let's go to the next one.
Do you want the job as college football commissioner?
Do I want it? No. I think there's plenty of people that could do it. The guy to your left could do it. The likes of Oliver Luck.
So too.
Who used to be in this league.
He said he'd be interested.
Yes,
Gosh, can you stick around here a little bit longer and so forth? Yeah. Does Dennis Dodd have a favorite sports movie?
You know what? It's kind of hackneyed, but Everybody's All-American. It was a book by Frank DeFord, and it was loosely based on, now I can't remember, the old Heisman Trophy winner at LSU. God, what was the guy? He went to jail.
Gray Ghost.
Yeah.
Great Ghost. What's his name?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was.
shoot. Yeah.
See, I'm getting old. Um, but anyway, that was a cool sports movie that people don't remember. And when I Frank DeFord hired me at the National in New York, by the way, while wearing a letter jacket with that movie on the back, stitched on the back.
Is there one interview that you hope someday to have, or the one interview that got away?
I had trying to think who. There's one or two that got away that I'm trying to remember. I was set up to talk to. I was two things. I was supposed to meet Bill Walsh. I went in March of whatever year it was. Jim Harbaugh's first year at Stanford, and interviewed him in his office. And we know Jim Harbaugh is quirky. He had ridden to work on a 10-speed on his with his Indianapolis Colts satin warm-up jacket to reflect headlights, because he'd go in the middle of the night, at 5 a.m. And randomly he gets up in his office and, "Do you want to meet Bill Walsh?" And I go, "Yeah," because he was either the AD or an advisor at the time. And he goes down the hall and he wasn't there. I had a chance to meet Bill Walsh. The other one was I was set up to meet Casey Wasserman, who's a big donator, big guy, running the LA Olympics in 2028, at the Polo Club at the Beverly Hills Hotel to talk about Chip Kelly when he got hired. And I don't know if he blew me off, but he couldn't make it. This is one of the true power brokers, not only in entertainment, but in sports, because of what he's done. And I always regret that we weren't able to meet up.
Well, listen, man, you took a lot of time with us today. I appreciate you being our first guest, national sports writer today. And you got anything for us before we sign off?
Okay. The rule I change in college football.
Thank you.
There you go.
This is a pet peeve. I would stop the clock on first downs. I love that rule. It makes the college game distinct from the NFL. There's more plays, or there were more plays. Now there's about the same. But I always thought that was special about college football. I'd put that back in.
Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Dennis, appreciate you, man. Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, you've known Dennis a long time, and I think it's interesting that a guy in a national spot like that understands the history of the Big 12 and the current makeup as well. And we sometimes fight that nationally, but I think Dennis is one of those guys that understands what the Big 12 is today.
Yeah, he lives in that region, and he's a seasoned guy, and he's been around for a long time, and he's really spry too. He's got a lot of energy. He works hard at it. Makes a lot of calls. He's a guy that I call quite a bit when I hear something happen nationally, and he always has a really good idea of what's really going on. I mean, not only is he talking to other ADs around the country, but he's talking to college presidents, commissioners, just people that are key stakeholders in college athletics, and also, the broadcast companies as well. And he's done a really good job. He's very fair. I'm glad that he was on our show today and could showcase some of his knowledge.
I'm going to end with this because we played basketball at Allen Fieldhouse, which is a great environment. And the cool thing is I'm getting set to broadcast the game. I look across, and there's a dad proudly taking a video of his daughter. There's the UCF AD, and your daughter dances for Kansas. That'd be kind of cool.
It was pretty cool. Except for the guy that was sitting next to me. I think he was like an assistant media relations guy for KU basketball. He was giving me this really weird look, like, "Why are you filming these girls?" And I had to remind him. I was like, I only filmed a dance team, and that's my daughter out there. And notice I don't have my camera.
Yeah,
that's right. Cool. Exactly. But yeah. And you know what? We had Big 12 meetings. As I said earlier, we had Big 12 meetings last week. And the chancellor of the University of Kansas, Doug Gerard, also said, "I saw you filming your daughter." So it was just pretty cool. Yeah. And you know what? It's we talked a little bit about this last show. You don't get to see your kids in the college a lot. And so I think that's my second basketball game in 4 years that I've seen her. Saw her in the Big 12. Yeah. Because I went we weren't in the league yet, but I went to one of the games because we had meetings there. And then she has one more game senior day, and I'm going to go to, and that's the Saturday before the Big 12 game starts, and I'm going to go to that, and then that'll be our last time.
Good stuff. Thanks,
dancing.
Terry. Appreciate it.
All right, man.
We'll catch you next time with another edition of our Program AD Chats with Mohajir and Marc. Go Knights, charge on.